right to it?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Greetings and
Uh,
peace, everyone. I would like to start this with the greeting of the Noor Fatimiyya Sufi order, Noor alaikum, upon you be light. And after a long time, I'm honored to be joined by my brother Matt Douglas, who always comes with beautiful insights and revelations and reflections. And in this latest episode, brother Matt wanted to talk about the egregores of the Baha'i faith. So, my brother, take it away. The floor is yours, and it's good to have you back.
Nur alaikum Salman, glad to be back. I know we've had kind of busy lives, but we always come back to do this and try to share some good stuff. Um, and sometimes share some awakening stuff, some unpleasant truths as well, which I'm definitely gonna talk a lot about today. Um, you had because we've talked about this idea, and I knew it was like it was time to do it when you did a recent when you did a video recently with Comrade Pepe, and you're talking about the egregores of masonry, and how you both got out of that. And so I was definitely um vibing with you on that. I mean, granted, there were probably some things where I'm like, because I've never been a Mason, so there might be some, you know, minutia that might be a little different. Um, but for the most part, it's like, yeah, that kind of sounds like me in a way. And um, my getting out of the Baha'i faith, trying to, you know, m- maintain a humanity with those still stuck in it, and hopefully, hopefully getting them out. But no, I shouldn't say hopefully. That's a hope's a dangerous word. Um, but just having a straightforward conversation. And now I know. I mean, to some people, this might seem like a obscure topic, but I was thinking, like, well, how do we make this for not just people I want to address? Because I'm going to do this in such a way that I'm tagging people. I'm tagging friends who are still in the Baha'i faith. Granted, I know I know on some level they gotta have some qualms about it. Um, but um, there's no reason why we can't just have a conversation straight up. I was actually kind of somewhat inspired too. I had some friends, still Baha'is, who were passing through Thailand. This is about 8 months ago, and we were able to actually have a conversation about it. Granted, it started with one of them, um, well, I got something to ask you, and I'm like, just spill it. I kind of felt like you saw the movie Keeping the Faith, where Jenna Elfman's character is asking Ed Norton's about now being a priest and being celibate. It kind of started out that way, but then I'm just like, just spill it, and we had a conversation. Um, and I wouldn't. Well, while it's the kind of conversation that's not exactly gonna be fully complete in any one session, it was as complete as it could be. And these people are quite left politically. So when we're talking politics, there was plenty to talk about. And well, frankly, um, you can't have this kind of a discussion without going into um, the politics that are going on in the world and the historical backdrop. Because this just does not exist in isolation, and to think it does is actually quite dangerous. So I think there will inevitably be things that people who have no experience whatsoever with Baha'is or Masons can still get something out of it. And I think it'll be kind of, because it'll be inevitable, as things are a lot more interconnected than they appear to be on the surface.
Yes, brother Matt, definitely. And just like how there's like a hive mind, or there's like an energy that comes into your life when you join these different groups. What is the difference you've seen in terms of during the Baha'i faith and after the Baha'i faith? I know with Comrade Pepe, he talked about his experiences with the Golden Dawn. I talked about Masonry and how to leave it correctly. So, what would you advise like people of the Baha'i faith, like how to leave it correctly and how to separate yourself from that energy correctly?
Well, I don't know if there is a correct way to leave it. I mean, you resign. I mean, it's that simple. Now, and that was probably one thing where I probably need um, you to explain a little more what you mean by because I remember you guys used the phrase in good standing, I believe, to leave in good standing. Now, that's a term that does exist within the administration of the Baha'i faith. But if you're not in good standing, um, if you're Baha'i, but you're not in good standing with the administration, in which case they put various administrative sanctions on you that actually isolate that person even more from the community. So it doesn't exactly, it might actually help push people out the door. Um, I don't know if I'd agree that you necessarily have, I mean, because if you're saying not in good standing, I mean, sometimes, like, it's not like there aren't things that the Baha'i administration would sanction you for that, every other organization on the planet will either sanction or kick someone out for. I mean, every organization on the planet has that. But the reason, you're going to have different local bodies making that decision, some of which could be, particularly dysfunctional. So there might be a good reason you're not in good standing, or there might be a total bullshit reason you're not in good standing. And if the latter, I certainly wouldn't agree to do what you got to do to be quote unquote in good standing before getting out if you want to get out. I'm not sure how. So you might want to flesh out, um, that part of your, give a little more detail if you can without, breaking any oaths or anything.
No,
Um,
that just simply means that basically, I know in masonry, to put it simply, it just means you don't owe them anything in terms of your lodge dues and things like that. So yeah, you basically leave honorably. You're not indebted to the lodge and things like that. It's as simple as that. You came in, you basically leave the same way you came in, with a clear debt, and you don't owe them anything. They don't owe you anything. It's like that sort of deal. So yeah, that's what it means by like the egregore. Like, how was your life during the Baha'i faith, and how are you feeling after? How did you leave it? What would you advise the people who want to leave it? So please take it away. The floor is yours.
um, well, we live in a very multifaceted, interconnected world. So egregores, it can be gross and subtle. I mean, I remember when I was listening to Pepe's story about how, he felt like just a weight being lifted off of him. It was definitely more subtle for me. Um, but what was interesting is, I'd been thinking for so long about, getting out of the US and, going abroad. And well, sure enough, within a year, I mean, because I hadn't been out of the US other than just a few small trips over the border into Canada and Mexico, and even the Canada one was just barely getting over the border. Now gone to Mexico a few times, spent a couple days, but on occasion, but really hadn't been outside. And then, for me, within a year, I start traveling internationally. Now, I'm not going to, like I said, I had Baha'i friends visit me about 8-9 months ago, so it would be kind of silly to say that all Baha'is are trapped in their country. Obviously, egregores, affect people differently. So to say that my experience would be the same as everybody else's would just be a lot of shit. But has, for me, things considerably improved? Absolutely. And when I look back, it was the best decision I made. And, for me, one thing that's just, in a way, it was kind of like, for all the Baha'i talk about unity and we're one world and all that, well, it's like I really gained that world citizenshipness when I left. So, because it's for all their international connections, Baha'is can be a pretty isolated lot. So, not everyone, but a lot of them are. And sometimes the isolation is more of like, I'd almost say classist. Okay, like one hobby I picked up, and I actually picked it up from a buddy of mine in the faith, is I started going out to karaoke, and this is when I was still in it. And now, just like Muslims, Baha'is don't consume alcohol, but karaoke often takes place in a bar, so you're oftentimes going to a bar in which, yeah, there can be some weird egregores in bars, but at the same time, you're also going to just meet a lot of people who are stressed, having a hard time, and just wanting to unwind. And you meet some nice, good, as crazy as some people are that you meet some nice people there too. But you get if a lot of Baha'is would, you can go into a bar and not drink, but buy a couple of sodas or coffees or whatever else. I mean, they upcharge them. They're still going to make a profit. So go in. Maybe not as much as if they, you bought alcohol, but they'll do that, and you be chill, and you do it. Whereas there are definitely, and I'm not telling people, oh, just go out to a bar. If there's an activity there that does not involve drinking, sure, then that's fine. But there was definitely that kind of, you definitely had plenty of Baha'is who wouldn't go to something like karaoke just because it took place in a bar. And to me, that's getting a little snooty. Also, though, even more importantly, it's like the Baha'i faith and its administration have a very colonial mindset of what I'll call headhunting, just wanting to convert people to Baha'ism. And so it's like that encapsulates kind of everything. They call it teaching. And on some levels, it might not be all that different from, say, Dawah, but there's definitely for all the talk of unity that they have, there's definitely we're right, we have the truth, no one else does. Ego boosting, exclusive, snooty mentality. So I'm not saying every Baha'i does that, but I mean, a lot do, and it is pushed by the, but by the administration. There would even, I've even been to conferences where some people would say it outright. Granted, and we're proud of it, which of course, drew some backlash. But it's like any other group you want to join just for a humane reason, for a common cause. There's always that backdrop of using it to quote unquote teach the faith, as they say. And that really just ends up fucking your efforts over, plain and simple. Because you can't just go and contribute to something else just for the sake of contributing to that something else. Whether it be, volunteering at a homeless shelter, or joining some local political organizing or whatever. Okay, you're told to, that you should always have teaching, quote unquote, at the back of your mind, as if that's like the only genuinely meritorious thing to do. And despite that they might wax on about whatever other charitable and humane causes there are and how you should be part of it, et cetera, there is always that, what's the word I want to use here? That kind of elephant in the room, albeit more like a cobra in the room, of, that we need to convert them mindset, which really poisons, hence my using the cobra, in the analogy, really poisons the efforts in a lot of ways. I'm not saying there aren't some who manage to find a way, but for the most part, yeah, it screws you up there. And so, in a real weird sort of way, it's like, despite all their talk about world peace and togetherness, it's in a way very isolating and very insular. So yeah, at least that's how it manifested for me. It's gonna manifest in different ways. But sadly, like I said, there are many egregores, and egregores overlap. As we're people who both travel and have traveled, America has an egregore. Now, for me, that's the one that I noticed just physically feel. The times I go back to the US, I'm just not as happy. I know I'm not as happy, and I'm waiting to just get the hell out of here. Was there an overlap between the Baha'i egregore and the American egregore? Yep. Because ultimately, the Baha'i values are American values, they're white values, they're not universal values. I mean, Abbas, the successor to Mirza Hussein Ali, who the Baha'is call Baha'u'llah, actually wrote a prayer for America and said, render this just government victorious during the Jim Crow era. I mean, it's nuts. And probably the one thing that I remember from the conversation with my friends, that now that I think about it, probably I might have had a better answer for, was, one of my friends said, well, that's the ideals. But the thing is, it's like, when I think about that, show me one country that doesn't have ideals. Show me one country on the planet that doesn't talk about unity as a nation and freedom and prosperity, and et cetera, et cetera. Now, they might have different definitions of those terms. That in some cases might be polar opposites from one nation to another. And, certainly there are going to be politicians in all nations that are very out of touch with the people, who use that kind of terminology just to get elected, or to, if there's no election, just to kind of rev people up and that sort of thing. But and it's lip service and they don't mean it, but you're gonna hear it everywhere. So you're still gonna have, so with Abbas writing this, then you can't, you have to realize that yes, he was on the pro-imperialist side of America. He would say some token things to bring the minorities on board, and then say other things to completely undermine that. He called Native Americans the spiritual leaders of North America, but then also called them unenlightened until Columbus showed up, and never once, talked about anything that we would think of as land back. Same thing with the Africans. Calling the Black people the people of the eye, how light enters humanity, but then also calling Africans in Africa, barbarians, depraved, uncivilized, all the same crap that Whitey would call them. So there's, so in a way, it kind of, it is just another empty political line when it comes. And it wasn't, unity wasn't much of a common buzzword, back in, like, say, the 80s when I was growing up. But look at it now, everybody's talking about unity. But for the most part, it's all bullshit. And it's like, if Baha'i, if there's something that the Baha'is have contributed to bullshit politics, it's the misuse of the word unity. So I'll pause there for a minute and let you go.
Yeah, no doubt. And thank you for pointing the fact out about America having its egregore, because myself, having traveled the world and going to Pakistan and coming back here, I noticed like how relaxed I really feel when I'm over there. And there was another guy that I knew from the original area that I'm from, and he was under like heavy spiritual warfare. And anytime he would leave the US and go to his home country, like he would be absolutely fine. I mean, what we call like spiritual warfare or gang stalking or things like that. So there is a dark energy that's associated with what we know as the USA. And I mean, it's all self evident with the founder of Baha'ism, who's praising America during the Jim Crow era laws. And basically, any organization which caters to what we know as colonialism and white supremacy and what they're using as a front, that we're all equal, we're all united. especially with their headquarters being in Haifa, Israel, of all places. And
Yeah, well,
they
get
haven't
into
said a
that
word
a
about
bit.
the genocide.
On. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over. I'm just like, yeah, we definitely have to touch on Zionism. But
Yeah,
don't go on and
definitely. So yeah, please continue, brother Matt.
yeah, and like I said, I wasn't trying to talk over. I'm just like, yeah, footnote, or let's get back to this. But yeah, now I'm not going to go into a long thing about it because we've already gone into that, and you can link the videos that we've done on that. The one where I basically call out Baha'i central figures as being Zionists by using their own words. I think that was like a 2-hour talk. you know?
Yeah,
So
that
no
was
need.
the last podcast that we did, and
Yeah,
you nailed their asses to the wall. So I'm gonna put that in the description below.
yeah. Oh, I did. Um, and even like when I've certainly talked with a few people subtly, not into a long conversation, but I bloody well know that there's a whole lot of people in the Baha'i faith who know damn well that what Israel is doing is nothing but a fucking genocide. But because the Baha'i administration has their headquarters in Haifa and is got a really cushy relationship with the Israeli government, that they don't say a damn thing. And to me, that shows the Baha'i administration for what it is. Okay, because one popular phrase in Baha'i communities, it can be used for good, but oftentimes isn't, and is used just to kind of shut people up. Is the concept of it's more important to be unified than it is to be right. But what the Baha'is are showing by turning a blind eye to the genocide committed on the Palestinian people by the state of Israel is that they're showing that because their central figures, made some bullshit prophecy about, their administration being visited by all the kings and bringing world peace, blah, 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 that they got to put up with this. What they're showing, rather than saying, maybe this isn't the place for it, and maybe we don't want to side with people who are committing these atrocities. What they're showing is they're going to a degree that I think is much worse, because what they are showing is that it is more important to be right than it is to be compassionate. And, in which case, I'd put compassion as even more important than being unifying. And for them to put rightness of, well, these are what our, leaders prophesied, above standing with oppressed people who are getting slaughtered, however meagerly, it shows that they're just on the side of the fucking oppressor, plain and simple. And I've had some. It didn't go a long way. I mean, the friends who visited me, they obviously were not cool with what Israel is doing. I've had a few other small conversations about that with some people still in the faith. And I'm thinking other people who I haven't really talked to, people who I haven't even had the GMAT why'd you leave conversation, that I know cannot be cool with this. I mean, like one person who comes to mind, and she's actually Jewish, but she's like this sweet, motherly type, and I know she cannot be condoning what Israel's doing. You know, I mean, how many? It's like over 100,000 innocent people, a lot of whom are women and children, who have been killed by the state of Israel, but by what is Zionist settler colonialism. So, I know there's got to be some. I know there's enough people that have some humanity in there that they know that this is wrong, but the buzzwords about unity get used as a toxic positivity to not do anything, to not stand. Now, I'm not going to say that that you can't be wise about how you approach it, but I don't see any, well, let's see how we're going to approach it coming out of the Baha'i administration. I see them just shutting up like a bunch of cowards, if not a bunch of just outright Zionist racists who are supporting this shit. I mean, it's just inhumane. But yet there are people who, I would encourage. It's like, yeah, you see this shit going on? You see your administration doing a damn thing? No. What's that tell you about them? Okay, get the fuck out. That might be mean, but that is what it is. And frankly, with the Palestinians, I don't give a fuck if I'm, not being a nice guy about it. Because, these are words. Palestinians are putting up with a whole lot more than just mean words. Y'all can take it. Over to you.
Yeah, brother Matt, I think so too. And anyone with a conscience and a heart, if they understand and see what's going on is wrong, then they will object to it, saying that, okay, this is located in Haifa, Israel. They're not saying nothing about it, yet they claim to be all love, light, and happiness and unity. It's like many other spiritual and esoteric groups who claim to be love and light and unity, but they're filled with some dark, dark beings and individuals. So that's what it all comes down to. People need a conscience, and if they see something that is not right or doesn't fit their values or their spirit, they need the courage to walk away, like you did, like how Brother Stephen Bayer did, and other good people who have walked away from this.
Yeah, and I would, suggest to the people who see things that are going on, now again, yes, there are bad ways to approach this, and or even, sometimes with good intentions. I do remember, I'll say a little over a year ago, a Bahai reached out to me via Messenger, because he was really concerned, about what was going on in Iran, and wanted to give some support to, what we would know as the Women's Life Freedom Movement, even though more or less a lot of Baha'is were not using those words. No, I said, and I told him straight up, I said, okay, I don't think your approach here is a good idea. And I didn't even have the words at the time for it, but basically he's like, he wanted to basically start like maybe a petition, or at least just a, email storm or something like that. To ask Google to, how Google will, like, on certain days change their logo to fit that or some event or some cause or whatever. He wanted to, like, have get Google to support women life freedom. Like I said, that wasn't I don't think he used that term. And I said, I don't think that's a good idea. And mainly it wasn't really on the tip of my tongue, but I wasn't with the idea of boasting and involving what basically came down to a big ass Western corporation, because that invited potential Western hijacking of of that cause, of that movement. And I know there are some Baha'is, especially Persian females, who have made their own individual social media statements about it and giving it support. So all good there. But on the administrative point of view, well, they didn't do anything to support it. What they did do is they basically tried to join it to hijack it and make it about themselves, creating a hashtag called "Our Story Is One." And basically, and yes, there were back in the 80s, there were 10 women in the city of, I think it was Shiraz. Could have been another city, but pretty sure it was Shiraz. Who were put to death, basically for teaching. Even we, as much beef as we as the Fatimiyya have, with the Baha'is, we're certainly not going to condone the actions of the Iranian state on that one, or even anything close to it. Nonetheless, it's not, I don't think it's cool at all of the Baha'is to be hijacking women's freedom for the purposes of trying to spread their own religion or whatever. If they, and that comes back to the egregore that kind of pulls at you, that you can't really contribute humanely without that sort of crap getting in the way, because they couldn't just go and say, yes, we support women life freedom, and I mean, there's plenty of Persian Baha'is in the United States who were born in Iran. If they really wanted to do something, plenty of them still have family in Iran. If they wanted to slush fund that movement, and just give money in solidarity, but letting the women on the ground in Iran lead it without co-option or hijacking, they could have given a shitload of money to it, maybe even enough to make the difference for them to win. Didn't happen. So what's that tell you about where the Bahai administration is?
Yes, yes. You're absolutely right on the money. And from the way that I see it, groups like Baha'ism or Zionism or like any Masonic group or any of the stuff that's out there that really hasn't really helped people in any way, I see them collapsing within the next 10 to 20 years, by like the late 2020s or the 2030s. Because the next generation, Brother Matt, like they're more aware, they're more conscious, like all these young adults, kids becoming young adults, and they're not going to tolerate any of that BS anymore. I think we will see that change within our lifetimes. And even for the people of Iran, the women getting the freedom, and all these groups that are spreading colonialism and systems of control, they're going to fall as well. And I think a lot of that has to do with all the great work that you've done, Sheikh Wahid has done, Brother Stephen Bear, all of the great friends and comrades of the NOR FSO are a great part of this revitalization process of humanity. So yeah, that's super important, and I thank you just for your presence and what you do.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's this is going to be a very sexist analogy, but it works here. Sometimes I feel like I'm a flea crawling up an elephant's ass with rape on his mind. Because I mean, I'm one person out of it, billion, you know. Yeah, I mean, I know it's a crass analogy, but sometimes you got to give it loud and dirty. One thing I want to also get to, I was thinking, you're saying other people don't put up with it. Now, the younger generation isn't going to put up with it. Good odds on that. I know, though, a lot of, I was thinking about, when I knew, earlier today, when I'm kind of just, talking to myself, so to speak, about what I'm going to say. And wasn't the first person to have said this, actually ripped it off, but the analogy fits. And I was thinking of the Greek myth of Pandora's box. Now, the way we interpret that, at least, I don't know, I haven't talked to too many folks here in Thailand or elsewhere, or elsewhere in Asia about what they think of that whole story. But I think, it's largely misinterpreted in the West, including by the Greeks themselves, most likely, and just kind of spreads. But when you're told about Pandora's box, she got curious, she opened the box, and it released all the demons, but at least, there was still the little angel of hope inside. So they almost set up, well, even though there's all this bad stuff, there's still hope. And I think that's a misinterpretation, because what it misses is the simple fact that, and of course they don't ask the question, that hope is in that box too. Why is hope in that box? And the answer is real simple. It's because it belongs there, because it's another fucking demon. And I think that is what, because, it tries to offer people hope, but it's a false hope. And, most hope is, it's, you don't need hope, you need action. Now, what actions you do, they can vary in wisdom, certainly. And, sometimes you just gotta experiment. Because anything's, because you look around, it's like, can't get much worse. How badly can we really fuck it up if we try something different? But I think, that kind of idea of hope and that, just have faith and it'll all work out. That, I'm not saying that that's totally bad, but I'm saying it's often very toxic. It's often very much a toxic positivity that, we'll call it spiritual bypassing, whatever term you want to use, to keep you from actually looking at a situation and going, okay, this is fucked up and we need to do something. And I think that keeps a lot of people in the Baha'i faith, is they're wanting to maintain, they're clinging to that demon of hope. And so they're creating whatever rationalization in their mind to somehow convince themselves that, it's all part of the plan. Now, I'm not saying God doesn't have a plan, they scheme, but Allah is the best of schemers. Nonetheless, that can be taken and twisted in a very wrong way to just not do a damn thing when you see injustice going on. And I got a little more to say, but over to you. We need a little segue.
Yeah, you're definitely right, brother Matt. And I think people really need to sit down and think about these things, about how they want to move forward. And yeah, I mean, you laid it right there on the money. People have more discernment, especially, and avoid those traps of toxic positivity and seeing things for what they really are. And I think you painted that in a beautiful and a vivid manner for those people that are seeing the Baha'i faith, and not only the Baha'i faith, but all these elements of colonialism that are coming in front of us. Because this Palestinian genocide has exposed so many people's true faces, whether it's in the Baha'i faith, whether it's in Masonry, or what Brother Pepe saw in Golden Dawn. Like uh, here and there, it has exposed the true reality for everyone. Which goes to my next question: is how do you like, in terms of like the Baha'i faith and those that want to leave it? What can they do to advocate for, let's say, people in the future who want to leave it and come to Babism or the Nor FSO? How would you advise all of that in terms of them actually looking into the reality of what is Babism and what is Baha'ism and actually finding the real truth?
Well, there's Islam brought the idea explicitly. It was there before, but you can clearly, at least in Western religion, it clearly explicitly starts with Islam, even though you could definitely look at Christianity, Judaism, Zoroastrianism as having this implicitly. The concept of looking, of seeking truth for yourself. The Baha'i have the jargon of quote unquote independent investigation of truth, which is fine if not for the fact that they try. I mean, yes, they are a religion without clergy, but there's still administration that you are supposed to submit to pretty much unconditionally. So I wouldn't say that, following your conscience is really all that encouraged as much as they might say it on the surface. And worse, with many other things as I've said before, it can be definitely checked out in the video in other videos that I've done, that Wahid has done, that the idea of searching for truth for yourself explicitly is Islamic. And the Baha'is took many concepts that are Islamic and that Islam brought to the world. And the Baha'is try to rebrand them and take the credit for them, and hence creating, really, because what it's doing essentially is bolstering Islamophobia by people not seeing that this is what Islam brought to the world. Now, one thing I want to say about what we as Bayanis, we can call us Babis, although I do recommend using the term Bayani simply because, unfortunately, Babi and I'm only one country away from Malaysia, and unfortunately, Babi in Malay happens to mean pig. So watch it there. Just say Bayani is the better way to go. But what needs to be really clear to Baha'is is that the Bab was not creating a new religion separate from Islam. Bayanism is part of Shiaism. The Baha'is, on the other hand, if you try to call them part of Shia or defectations from Shia, will get in a tizzy. No, we're an independent world religion. We don't try to do that because, again, this is where the Baha'i faith plays in to the whole clash of civilizations propaganda. The Baha'is have a tenet they call progressive revelation. The idea that God always sends a messenger when needed, or people are ready when revival's needed, et cetera, et cetera. Well, there's another word for that existed before progressive revelation, and that word is Islam. Now, I'm not saying that we're just all peachy with everything that's going on in the Islamic world. And yet we see a lot of reform needed as Baha'i's, but we do give the credit where it is due, that because you'll hear it's very common, sometimes even like a tagline on their banners, Muslims worldwide, if they're in an English speaking country, giving dawah, which is, for anybody listening, that's just Arabic for, I'm not sure the exact, but like teaching or sharing the religion or whatever. But the whole the idea that they'll use Muslims giving dawah, if they set up like a booth or something, will often have the very common phrase, Jesus was a Muslim, because they're teaching to a predominantly Christian audience. And the whole idea is that Islam is not the following of just Muhammad. It's submission to God, the one God. And that they say Jesus is a Muslim, as well as Moses was a Muslim, Abraham was a Muslim, etc., because they were calling the people to God. And on God's way of love and compassion and understanding and justice, etc. So this concept that the Baha'is brand as progressive revelation was already branded as Islam over 12 centuries beforehand. And it's not just implicit, it is very, very explicit in Islam. So no, we as Bayanis are not going to be, we're an independent. No, we're part of the Islamic world. We might have a lot of differences, and see a lot of need for reform, especially in championing the divine feminine, which has been repressed from pretty much the powers that be in all Abrahamic religions for quite some time now. But we're not saying that we are the only true path and that everybody should just come to us. In fact, we have good relationships with other people, with other groups. I wouldn't say they're like super tight alliances, but good solid camaraderie with other groups that also have like what you might call a modern day prophet, just the way you put Sheikh Wahid in touch with, oh my God, I'm forgetting his name, and I should remember it because he's on my friends list now. But the head of the Moorish Science Temple.
Oh yeah, that podcast we did on critical race theory with brother Sharif Anyal Bey. He's a wonderful brother.
Yeah, Sharif Anyal Bey. I'm sorry, his name had totally slipped my mind. If he's listening, brother Sharif, my bad for forgetting your name. I'm sorry. So I wanted to make that clear. and right now we actually have a ban, you might say, on white guys from North America, or at least United States, Canada, joining. Now you might get, yeah, that fits me, I know, and I got a you might say a special invitation from Wahid himself to join. He's given that to several other guys, um, who, given that to a few other whiteys trying to reform like myself. But it takes he did it because he said, I've seen that you've shown a lot of solidarity with the global South. So, I got one, but if you're listening and you're an American white guy, good luck. Okay. Because, ultimately, this is not because we're I know this is the kind of thing that some dickhead right wingers could try to say, oh, look, you're the real racist and all that kind of, bullshit that they like to say. But, you have to take into practical considerations, and going back to the whole concept of an egregore. Yeah, is there an egotistical egregore around the white male in the world? Oh, hell yeah. I mean, I have to work on that. So, this is not because the Baha'is come from really they approach their quote unquote teaching um in a very colonial missionary mindset. Um I got to spell it out sometimes that no, that's not who we are. And it's funny because I was if you're a Baha'i who goes to a country without, or just even a region without, too many Baha'is, they like to call you a quote unquote pioneer. Yeah, that term's pretty loaded with some colonial stigma too. Um, but I remember actually a friend of mine who joined the faith for a few years and then got out of it. And I was talking about how I'm really looking, this was several years ago. I was telling her about how, I'm looking to eventually, move to Thailand or somewhere in Southeast Asia and kind of settle down there. Um, and she's like, well, now that you're, Bayani, does that mean like you're a pioneer? And I'm like, no, no, that's a colonial mentality. No, we ain't about that. So, for me again, you go and you try to join in with humane efforts. And, what we as the Fatimiyya are mainly about two things. Now granted there's a whole lot more to it, but if I want to just sum up two real essentials. One, um maintaining the integrity of the Bayan and the other teachings of the Bab, and keeping them alive for however humanity can make use of them without screwing them up more than general human error. And championing the divine feminine. That's it. We're not looking to convert the whole world to our order or faith or whatever term you want to use. We're not here to say to the Baha'is, oh, just come join us. No, doesn't work that way. Because it's about you having the maturity to go and work with other people, to work with other people, to learn from other people, to spread truth as best you know it, and to stand up for those who need standing up for. Whether or not someone, we don't have an open door policy. If you want to join the Fatimiyya, talk to Sheikh Wahid, see if he thinks you're a good candidate or not. You can talk to one of us first, but right, I mean, sure, in the future as we get more members, obviously not everybody's going through whoever's at the head of it, but even when I talk about that sort of growth, I'm not talking about any kind of taking over the world or any kind of crap like that. But even if we grew to say, relatively small number of the population, like 10,000, 100,000, we're probably going to need more than one person figuring out, how you come in. We'll worry about that later as the need arises. But we're not about converting people to our way. We're just like keeping these alive so that they can be, so that the Bab's teachings his true teachings are always available to humanity. Other than that, you gotta do your soul searching. You gotta do your investigations. I'd say do your research, but that term has been so, which is true, but that term is so misused nowadays. So yeah, if you want to be part of the Fatimiyya, you got to be pretty grown up. You got to be able to have independence. But what I will say is, I think if you want, if people want to say, well, you're a small group, how do we know you're not a cult and all that kind of crap? A space CULT, not OCCULT, which we are, and we admit. Well, I'll say this. I used to do a lot of videos with Wahid. When you came along and joined, and because you were someone who regularly did videos with a lot of people. Mainly, most of what I do now is with you, because you have these podcasts with various people. You're usually highlighting whoever your guest is, in this case, moi. When I used to do podcasts with Bahai, now I like to think I'm an intelligent, knowledgeable guy. I'd say I am, but I think Wahid's got me beat in that department. So he's more of a scholar than I am, so he'd have more to say. But that's not because I don't have anything to say. So when he came along and started doing these videos, Wahid's just like, yeah, go ahead, do it. He's, actually, I don't even think he said it to me directly, or I never had to check. We just did it, you and me as brothers in the Fatimiyya, and that was okay. I'm sure he listens in case we do screw up and kind of misrepresent something, but he's not like censoring our podcast before they get put up on YouTube, because he knows that we're going to do our best. We have integrity, and even if we do make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. Anyone who's ever been to Bahai knows it does not operate that way. And for any person to put out, say, for a individual in the Baha'i faith to put out a book or even a pamphlet talking about, or to do a podcast like this, something like that, is highly, highly controlled. And a lot of stuff is rejected. So, if you want to know where, a truly mature freedom lies, look no further than that.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. And Sheikh Wahid Azal is awesome, and he's been awesome in my life ever since I met him. And through him, I met great brothers such as yourself, whom I had the honor to meet, and Brother Stephen Bear. And I learned a lot from all of you. And it's truly a beautiful journey of all of this, like, coming together. And yeah, for all of the people in the future, definitely reach out to any one of us and reach out to the Sheikh as well if you're interested in the Fatimiyya Sufi order and these Bayani teachings that are there, which are pivotal for today's modern time and all that we are dealing with. So yeah, thank you, Brother Matt. I mean, I feel the same way. The honor is mine, and yeah, we're all walking each other home and owe this love and light to one another on this short human journey. Which goes to my next question is, if there's anything I fail to ask you, anything you like to address on the egregores of the Baha'i faith, or anything else that you would like to talk about, please take your time. The floor is yours.
Um, well, okay, like, one thing I want to say is, first of all, I was like, well, someone might be going, well, gee, Matt, what's your purpose? Well, I mean, that's a question that you're always, like, as an individual. That's a question you're always reflecting on, and you get solid answers, but not immovable answers, lest you could be really screwed up. That's if your ego freezes and it is not malleable. But for me, I've found um, I find that here in Southeast Asia, there are a lot of, despite this being an area that's on the rise, all of Asia is, um, there's still a shitload of bullshit American propaganda out there that plenty of folks here in Asia end up buying hook, line, and sinker, mainly because of Hollywood. But that's certainly not the only arm of the Western propaganda machine. And so sometimes I kind of feel like, um, my role here is, dispelling the lies, dispelling the bullshit. Um, Now, right now, I'm just kind of doing that low key, mainly with friends and that sort of thing. Will I ever be in a position um, to do it really en masse with a big audience? Well, it'd be nice. We'll see if that's the path I'm meant to tread or not. Um, but I'm certainly intentionally inching towards it. Uh, so that for me is where I feel I'm meant to be. Uh, can it change? Well, yeah, you gotta kind of be open to signs. But right now, I'm not getting anything. I'm seeing that that's really needed right now. So that's something I want to put out there. But as imperialism, and imperialism doesn't have to be Western, but the greatest imperialist threat right now is the West, on humanity. Um, so yeah, I spend a lot of time dispelling Western propaganda, and things are things are going to get worse, especially with the reelection of Dump. Not that it would have been really much better if Harris had, but yeah, they're going to get worse. And I encourage anyone to get the hell out of the States if you can. It's noble if you want to stay around thinking you can fight and make a difference from the inside, but if you're just I love Che Guevara, but if you're just doing it to regurgitate his quote, thinking you have a longer dick because you're in the quote unquote belly of the beast, you really don't get it. So I encourage everybody to get the hell out. And frankly, if it's not like I can finance a bunch of people to get the hell out, but I'm sure as hell hoping to see what kind of options there are for people who really do want to leave. I mean, yeah, you can go on YouTube and you can find all kinds of stuff about it. But it's mostly A, people with money, and B, expats who want to stay with other expats and don't really give a shit about getting to know the locals. But I'll help anybody if I can in some way leave the States if that's what they want to do. And that is not limited to non-Baha'is. Get out if you can. Obviously, if you would think that if the Baha'is cared about people's well-being, they'd help people get out as they have a network around the world, but I don't see them doing that. Wonder why. So yeah, get out if you can. Look for what options are there. There are teaching jobs that you might be able to get if you have a degree. But who knows? Things are changing. World's changing fast. So, I'll keep my eyes open. And keep your eyes. Everybody who realizes what a shit show the U.S. is about to become. If you can get out, do it. If there's any way I can help, or if you just want to, talk to me, anybody, yeah, I'll help you. And if if you want to stay and think you can change something, well, that's brave, but I think you're clinging to the demon of hope.
I think so too, brother Matt. Two options I've seen recently. A woman that I know from the state that I'm in, what she's doing is she works for a company and she's applying for openings in different countries for the same company that she lives in hopes of getting work and possibly a residency due to her job. So some people are leaving that way. If you work for international companies or multinational companies, apply for positions in other countries. Other people, if they're like certified teachers or ESL teachers, they're English teachers, like they're marketing their skills in a way where it will help them get a visa and secure housing and employment to whatever location that they're trying to get to. So yeah, I see people making that effort, people who are sincerely trying to get out. And you're right. Southeast Asia, Asia in general, and the global South is the future. I remember in 2016, when I was taking a macroeconomics class in college, my professor was a retired U.S. military, and he said the same thing, that 10 years from now, at that time, he said in 2026, 27, the future of the world is going to be in global South and Asia. So I think you're in the right place. and you're a great representative of the Bayani community and the NOR FSO in Southeast Asia. And yeah, I would advise the same. Those that are able to get out, because this place is finished, and you see it right before you, where corruption's at an all-time high. The governments don't represent the people. It's not merit-based employment anymore. It's all about who you know. Things are like super expensive. I mean, these are the reasons why people from Pakistan and other third world countries leave to be able to come to the West. Now I have people in my community too that ask me, "Hey, help me come to America or England," and I tell them, "Stay where you are because that's where the future is in Asia." So, Brother Matt has given a golden advice because this
Yeah.
country is done.
And this is something that's outside the U.S. is easily seen. Now you'll get some, if you want some American voices saying that, one really good one that I'll recommend um, is you can YouTube him. His name's Richard Wolf. Wolf spelled with two F's, like the animal with two F's instead of one. Talking about how, look, we can't go on, you know, we every time we keep having, these proxy wars, we keep losing them. The American empire is declining. The rest of the world is not doing it, and especially with the rise of China, um, America can't get away with basically, and the Western, America, Canada, Western Europe, can't get away with plundering the world in general. And so what's happening is the rich people are wanting to keep all their money plus get even richer. So the burden falls upon, the middle and poorer classes in America and the West. And, they're the ones who are getting drained. Um, and, but neither candidate, neither one of the major would say a damn thing about that. So, um, yet, like, one of my, and like I am in Thailand on an education visa. I study the Thai language. Still ain't anywhere near as good as I want to be. Some of that, though, being that I'm a complex thinker, and so a limited vocabulary is frustrating as all hell to me. Because I got complicated thoughts, and I want to talk about things other than how to get a better bargain at at the local market. But we'll also just in the class, which because even though I've only been at it in these classes a year, our classes were down to just the teacher, me, and one other student. And we were talking about this whole idea like it was just obvious. The teacher's a Thai guy. I think he's roughly my age. Um, I mean, it was just something that everyone in Thailand can see. It's just, if you're paying attention, it's just obvious. Um, and yet this is something that just Americans refuse to look at. So I mean, the writing's on the wall. Yeah, I mean, there is. I've never actually personally seen it in Baha'i scripture, but there's at least a like common saying that goes around in communities that America will never be conquered. Um, the Native Americans don't say that. Listen to them. They say America will come and it will go. And I think they're right. And I think we're seeing it starting to go. Not to mention the fact that for Turtle Island, which is what most most of the Native American groups in what would basically be the U.S. Canada um, refer to North America as when you translate it into English. Most of them say, say that you know, that the land will be theirs again one day. The sovereignty of it. That's not to say that they're not going to share with everybody who's been through the ringer, although it's their call. It's their land. The Baha'is never supported them having their land back, just the way they're not supporting the Palestinian people now. So this is really obvious. I mean, I will say there are places where there's probably a big job market, although it's probably not any cheaper. And it's still, you could go to a place, I'm sure that, if you really tried you could find a job in a place like Singapore or even Dubai or something, Abu Dhabi, the UAE. You're still dealing with some really heavy capitalism. So I'm not going to say that it's, granted they're clean, they're not cleaner than the U.S. And they're nice folks, but it's still a very, a lot of dog eat dog capitalism there. But still they're smart enough to kind of see that, the global south is rising, so they're trying to play nice to both sides, stay out of wars, that sort of thing. So it's probably at least, you'd probably still be in the rat race, but at least you'd have much more physical safety there. So it's one option to look into, even though it's not ideal, but might be better than where you're at right now. Yeah. And another analogy I want to make, because this is somewhat on a bit of a different tangent, but like since this is a YouTube video, I think I'll compare the Baha'i faith as if religions were YouTube channels, what would the Baha'i faith be? And I gotta tell you, it's the Baha'i faith is Jubilee mixed in with a little bit of Nas Daily. Okay. You familiar with either of those two?
Yep, I know them, man. That's the funny thing about it. It's all a joke.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, like, for people who are not, Jubilee seems pretty interesting at first because they do these little segments and they're done well. They're done. I don't say well, but at least smartly. And they'll do different kinds of things. Like one of their big ones is called Middle Ground, where they try to get people on opposing sides talking, which sounds really nice and all, but what they end up doing is giving a platform to people with nutball ideas, sometimes just nutball, sometimes actually, very cruel and inhumane. And they always somehow seem to the people who would go against, they never seem to get really good qualified people to go against, the crazy shit and the alt-right shit. I was stupid enough, because I used to watch it until I kind of figured them out. I was actually stupid enough to click on the one they had of scientists versus flat earthers. For the love of God, even though I have said that, do not use the words flat earth in any title, in any notes for this video, because even though, like, I saw this on YouTube on my computer and I looked at Facebook on a completely separate device, with no direct links, I have been unable to get rid of flat Earth shit popping up on my Facebook stream ever since. You know, so you want to talk about Egregore? Yeah, this Egregore.
Yeah, that's right. It's crazy how like all these new AI systems really work. You were dealing with a totally separate device, and that happened to you. There have
Yeah,
there have been
and
instances where, yeah, you're right. Yeah, please continue.
oh, sorry. What I was going to say is like, and just what I saw happening in the faith is, and I saw this a few times, where like, they'll do something to supposedly be unifying, but they'll let people talk with some pretty toxic ideas and never fully refute them. And they'll usually use unity to do it. And I saw that, I mean, even on this like Jubilee video, where they had these flat earthers, and they got scientists, some of whom supposedly work for NASA, and I'll assume that they're not lying about that, and they actually do have the credentials they say they do, but maybe they don't. But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. But despite their credentials, they couldn't actually debate worth a shit, and just kept relying on, well, look, we keep testing this stuff, so therefore we know. But they never actually took the time to actually refute the bullshit flat Earth arguments, with which anyone with a junior high level science education can do. And so it just ended up promoting this crap. And they've had, like they tried to get Israelis and Palestinians talking, and yet they would have Palestinians telling their story, and these, Israeli folks would say, "Oh, that doesn't happen," just, when they weren't there. But they'll tell these Palestinians who are just given their testimony about what they saw, what they witnessed, and just let the Israelis completely deny it. And heck, if you want to talk about Israeli propaganda, just in the last week, there's been an insane amount of that appearing on my Facebook stream, and it's not, it's more subtle. It's not. It doesn't say anything about Palestine. It's usually just like tourism videos, and stuff, and scenery, and every country's got some nice scenery, but it's just, it is a mask for, the denial of the genocide of the Palestinians. And I'll usually pop on there before I block the page. I'll pop on there and, usually say something like "fuck Israel, free Palestine." And I'm not the only one doing that. Apparently, a lot of people are getting these things popping up on their timeline unasked for. But they're happening, and I'm like, so when I don't even want to call it an algorithm, because if the algorithms work to see what I was interested to know better, than to put Israeli, essentially Israeli tourism videos on my feed, um, some of which even do feature, the Baha'i gardens. So, and I don't see any Baha'is complaining about them being used, that way. So, what side's the administration on? Kind of obvious. So yeah, there's, it's kind of weird that here are, I don't want to say it's weird, because I know exactly what's going on, but people should take note of, who are in the Bible, should take note of how strict the administration is about publication of anything quote unquote Baha'i, and yet here are pictures of the Baha'i gardens in Haifa popping up willy-nilly on pro-Israel pages. And get a hint, guys. They're letting it happen.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, brother Matt. I mean, all that you described, that it's all in your face. People just have to like see it.
Yeah.
So, with that, are there any closing remarks that you have for this podcast until our next one?
Well, ultimately, there's a lot of other stuff I could say, and maybe we'll touch on it more. But I'm just saying to anybody, and especially if you're a Baha'i and you consider yourself left in some way, be it, whether you just want to call yourself progressive, I wouldn't necessarily say liberal, but yeah, okay, I'll say it just because it's defined differently and multiply. But if you're any sort, progressive politics, going even in towards what we'll call genuine left, such as socialist or communist or whatever, and keep in mind that Shoghi Rabbani called communism an evil, but not imperialism. So yeah, that lets you know what side he's on. If you have left politics, then understand that because as leftists, we do try to be inclusive, universally inclusive, and we, as the Fatimiyya and Bayanis, and even many esoteric Islamic scholars, especially Shia, such as Ibn Arabi, did talk about an eventual universal redemption, if you will. That doesn't mean that we don't call shit out or that we will welcome everybody to the table when they clearly have a toxic agenda. No, we're not. No, we're not going to invite Nazis to the table. No, we're not going to invite Zionists to the table. We're not going to invite settler colonialists to the table because we have to represent and champion the oppressed, and not just say, "Oh, the oppressed and the oppressor are all the same," and sing "Kumbaya." We don't do that. So I understand the temptation. Well, I mean, that's not to say you can't say that. That's not to say you can't be sympathetic to your average maggot idiot. Okay, and see how they're going to get oppressed too. But when it comes to people who are actually pulling the strings, no, we do not. No, we do not invite those people to the table. No, we have nothing in common with them. They're a plague on humanity, and we'll have nothing to do with them. And so, it's yes, in the end, after penance, God only knows what. Maybe all are redeemed, but in the meantime, we here got to be a little more practical. So if you take a good look inside, your progressive politics does not align with what the Baha'i founders and Baha'i administration is doing. It just don't.
Thank you, brother Matt. And I really enjoyed this enlightening podcast and all the information and wisdom and knowledge you shared. And after a long time, it's so good to have you back. And I look forward to our future episodes as well. And for the record, I give permission to brother Matt Douglas. He can download all of the podcasts that he has done on this channel, and he can upload them and share them wherever he wishes. And yeah, I'm truly grateful for him, Sheikh Wahid, Stephen Bayer, all of our comrades and friends and brothers of the NOR FSO. And yeah, until next time, thank you, Brother Matt, and Nor Alaikum.
Nor alaikum, alaikum nor.